All right, to discuss, let's bring in our UK and European correspondent, Jonathan Sacerdoti, who is in London for us. Jonathan, this meeting between Theresa May and Netanyahu was not only about Iran. Gaza came up as well. Tell us what happened.
Yes, well, Theresa May had originally, when reports of Palestinian deaths started to come through over recent weeks, she called for an independent inquiry into the situation. And she stood next to President Erdogan of Turkey when he visited the UK and questioned the Israeli use of live fire. So it was no surprise that she brought that up today when she met Mr. Netanyahu. But the demand for an independent inquiry was noticeably absent when she sat next to Israeli Prime Minister Netanyahu today, which leaves us wondering if she has since revised her opinion in the light of the admission from Hamas that a large number of those killed were actually members of the terrorist group. Either way, she did urge Mr. Netanyahu to try to find new solutions to ease the situation in the Gaza Strip, but her tone was softer, and there was a sense that she'd follow through, perhaps in no concrete way, just in these words.
And Jonathan, we heard Mr. Netanyahu in the setup piece talking about Iran, but what did Prime Minister May say about her concerns about Iran, or in fact the lobbying effort that Netanyahu was making about Iran?
Well, it's unlikely that Benjamin Netanyahu was expecting to hear anything new from Theresa May regarding the nuclear deal, at least in public. And she did reiterate that Britain wants to ensure Iran never gets nuclear weapons. But her commitment to the JCPOA remained clear and firm. She said that Britain will honour the deal as long as Iran does so too. But after the private meeting between the two prime ministers, a senior Israeli diplomatic official briefed Israeli reporters that the leaders of Germany, France and the UK had all agreed on the need to remove Iranian forces from Syria, which it turns out might have been Mr. Netanyahu's real and less openly advertised aim in this mini European tour.
Let's take a step back for a moment. All of this lobbying around the Iran nuclear deal started because President Trump pulled out of the deal and really angered the Europeans. So where does that relationship stand right now?
It's true that European leaders do not share President Trump's enthusiasm for abandoning what he calls the worst deal ever. In fact, we found out today that several of them got together and wrote to the US on Monday requesting exemption from secondary sanctions that would cripple the new extremely valuable commercial relationships those European countries are making with Iran. The European countries said that while they shared many of America's concerns about Iran, they preferred to honour the terms of the JCPOA. And while he's hard to second guess, it seems unlikely that President Trump will let them off the hook, though. So we have to watch carefully in terms of the US-European relations as countries are forced to choose between Iran and the USA. And in that situation, there really is no contest.
And Jonathan, what's the general sense in London and England right now about the Israeli-Palestinian conflict among the public?
Well, most of the public don't really have a firm opinion on this issue. It's not something that necessarily affects their day-to-day lives. But remember, every time Benjamin Netanyahu visits the UK, there is a small minority who will protest outside Downing Street very loudly. Does that sway the government? Maybe not. They make statements condemning certain actions of Israel, but they also always defend Israel's right to self-defense. And as far as it goes, it seems that's all they're going to do, make statements.
All right, Jonathan Sacerdoti, thank you. And as the Europeans scramble to keep the deal alive, there's a new report claiming a few months after the deal was put in place, the Obama administration tried to help Iran skirt sanctions that were in place at that time, but were later going to be lifted under the deal's terms.
Right. According to an investigation by Senate Republicans, the U.S. Treasury Department under President Obama issued a license in February of 2016 that would have allowed Iran to convert billions of dollars of Omani rials into euros by first exchanging them into U.S. dollars.
The license was not publicly disclosed and would have let Iran go through U.S. banks to complete the exchange.